So, today's fun project was getting the back corner jacked up and cribbed. So it's nice and solidly there. The jack's under it as well. The body's been blocked. I haven't jacked the other side up. I will need to, but probably not today. I'm gonna torque the bearings. I think I got them just a little tight, and I may have to pull the center diff out. It's leaking, and I'm gonna see how slow that leak is, hopefully today, by seeing how low the fluid level is, and decide from there if I'm pulling it apart or not. But today's project is mostly about this Allison V730 transmission here. It has several leaks. The obvious one is the pan gasket. This hose, which connected to the bottom of the torque converter housing over there, was leaking. So I've got it draining from the bell housing. These are a strange system where the bell housing itself is actually full of transmission fluid around the flex plate flywheel combo thing. I don't know which one they call it on these Detroits, but it has the starter ring gear and it ties to a shaft that comes back to this big housing where the torque converter sits. Because this is a V transmission, you can see the bell housing there. It comes back and there's I think it's a 63-degree angle bevel gear system, and then it runs forward towards the axle, and the differential is at a matching angle up front. So I'm working on clearing up a few leaks. Currently for the transmission, this filter is going to get replaced, this hose that's leaking, and the gaskets at the bottom end, and the pan gasket, and if there's an interior filter screen or sock, which I imagine there should be, I'll get one of those on its way, get all this cleaned up, and hopefully stop leaving wet spots. You can see before I backed it up, right there on the ground, it was soaking through. So I'm going to keep working, and I'll check back in a little bit. Alright, getting ready to pull this pan off, and I just wanted to note that the shift linkage cable brackets, the longest bolt, second from the left there, goes through the front bracket hole for the shift cable. So, note mostly for myself. Alright, one more note. Under the bracket, or on top of the bracket, under the oil pan flange, are these little aluminum spacers. So those go between the bracket there and the flange. So don't forget them. Well, that was a little bit of a mess, or a little bit of extra work. This transmission never belonged in a 4107 of this vintage, and so they had to cut out some of this bulkhead, and to brace that, they installed this piece underneath, which prevented the pan from dropping because of the big screen on the valve body. So I had to loosen 8 million little bolts here. I didn't take them all the way out on this side over here because they're tucked in some weird spots, and I just didn't want to deal with trying to remember which one goes where and get them back fished up inside the little channel there. So I loosened the ones on the far side over there, and I took all the ones on the far side rather out, and I loosened all of these bad boys and managed to finagle it just barely past. Getting it back in is going to be a little bit of a chore, but I think I can do it. And the valve body looks nice and clean. There's a very small amount of, shaved metal fibers on the magnet on the drain plug, but considering this thing probably has 400,000 miles, it's in pretty dang good shape. I have a receipt from the owner before last. This engine and transmission were put in as a power unit They were pulled out of a newer, I think 70-something, 77 maybe, transit bus, city bus or something different than the 4107 they're currently in. And they were installed, and I believe it said they had 390 something, like 394, 396,000 miles. I had the oil pan off the engine to replace its gasket and do an oil change and all that fun stuff. And the inside of the engine looks great. I didn't pull off any bearing caps, but the cylinders still had crosshatch and everything was super clean. And the same is true inside the transmission. There's a little bit of stuff here on this screen, just a few little bits of fiber gasket material and dust or dirt. I don't see any shiny metal stuff, which is good. I'm gonna wipe it off with some lint-free towels and spray it off with some brake clean before everything goes back together. I of course have to scrape my gasket surfaces. I think I'm gonna use some gray RTV and lightly glue the new pan gasket to the pan so that I can finagle it past that screen and brace and all that BS and get it put back up in there. Then I gotta figure out, these fittings have a weird like metal gasket with a rubber like cone piece, tapered piece. Never seen anything like that. I don't know if it's pipe thread behind that, but it has a mating flange that has that taper. So I need to talk to Luke at US Coach and see if that's a replaceable part that's still available, or what people might be doing with that, or if I can just use Teflon tape and a pipe fitting. In some ways that would be ideal because you can get those anywhere, and Teflon tape's easy to install, or pipe dope if you prefer. That one looked really pretty good, but it was wet all around it, so I think it was leaking there. The one up here on the back, you can't see it obviously now, I've pulled it out. It's down there. The one on that end of the hose is super rusty, and the gasket is different, but the fitting is just really rusty. And where the hose connects, all the threads are really rusty, so I would like to replace that if that's easy to do. And I'll have to check. We've got a Napa here in Waynesville, and they make hoses, so I'll get them to make new hoses, and I'll ask them about the fittings. If they don't, a couple towns over in Canton, North Carolina, there is a Freightliner truck shop, and I can probably bring it up there and get something similar. Or if Luke can get it to me, I don't mind supporting Luke. He keeps these old buses running and has great service and reasonable prices. So we'll see. I'm gonna keep cleaning up this pan, and I think it's probably time to make a run for some parts cleaner. But that's it for now.